Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg from Jerusalem, and tonight another class in the series of classes on Sagittarius, ascendant, and Jupiter in the different signs. Tonight we're going to be talking about Jupiter in Sagittarius. So here we have what's called the double Sagittarius. So the person becomes very, very connected to the sign of Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius is the natural ruler of the ninth house. The house of religion, philosophy, higher education, law, travel, all those areas in life will become very, very important to the person who has this combination, since it's doubled, right? Because it's not enough that you have Sagittarius on the ascendant, but you also have the planet that rules it there. So it's going to make a person very, very spiritually inclined, very, very religious inclinations, philosophical explanations. Person wants to go deeply into the meaning of life that has this combination. And so it's a person who, also a person can be a big traveler. He loves to travel. He or she, they'll love to travel. Right, because Sagittarius rules distant journeys. These are people you meet in the, in India and in China and in the jungles of South America. They just, they want to travel and they want to explore and they want to, understand things and and they're searching for wisdom. This is what I call, of course, the guru aspect, especially when you have the ruling planet in the first house in honor, but especially it's more and more prevalent when you have the Sagittarius rising, because the Sagittarius nature is to love to convince you that they're right. Whatever cause they take on, they want to convert everybody else to that cause and that belief. And so they're the natural gurus of the zodiac. I've seen so many people who have actually this aspect in my career. I tend to attract people that have very strong ninth houses, because I have a very, I'm into, the philosophy of astrology and the esoteric meaning of astrology and all sorts of things like that. So I attract people that are very, like what we call ninth house people, interested in religion, philosophy, and things like that. And so I've run into a number of them in my career. Recently, actually, I had a guy learn with me. He had that aspect, and he had that aspect. He had Jupiter on the ascendant with a Sagittarius rising, and he had a coterie of followers. He came to my class. I don't remember how I met him, but he decided he wanted to learn with me. He was already, an astrologer, and he came to me and he brought a coterie of all his followers. He brought with me like 5, 6 other people to teach them all astrology. And he also is another interesting thing. The people who have that, I've noticed, and especially with the Sagittarius rising, when you have the ruling planet in the first house, you're very, very interested in clothing, how you dress. You want to dress, and the people who have this, they dress in a very unique way. I have one guy I know, I did his chart, Sagittarius, Jupiter and Sagittarius. He's American, and he dresses like somebody from Yemen. He wears this long skirt and a turban and things like that. And this other guy that I'm talking about now, that, the guru, he wore, if I remember, he wore a white robe. On Shabbat he wore a white robe and a turban, and during the week also he had very unusual clothing that, to set him apart. The people who have this, the very strong first houses, they want you to be aware of them. Like we talked about like in acting and things like that, people have to have very strong first houses because they want to be recognized. And another way to get recognized is by what you wear, how you dress. And so people have the very strong first houses, especially with the ruler in the first house. they tend to dress in a unique fashion. I've observed this over time. And so it's a good thing to pay attention to, right? If you see someone dressing uniquely, you can sort of guess that he's going to have, he or she, they'll have a strong first house. They want to be recognized. So tonight I want to do a horoscope of an interesting man, very, very, talking about the gurus and stuff like that. This man became, he actually became he wasn't really himself a guru, but his books, he attracted a cult following in America, and for that matter in Europe, as a deep thinker, deep philosopher, and things like that. We'll talk about him in a minute. His name was Hermann Hesse. He was a very famous author, a writer in Germany. He left Germany and lived in Switzerland. And he devoted his life to intellectual pursuits and writing, and he traveled widely, traveled to India and places like that, Indonesia, I think, and other places. So he had all of this combination that we talk about of Sagittarius with Jupiter there. It's interesting, though, his chart, though, if you take a close look at it, even though he has that Sagittarius with Jupiter on it, you pay attention that he's got Uranus in the 9th house, and it's in a good trine to Jupiter, and it's in a tight trine to the ascendant. So it's a very strong 9th house, right? Because he's got the natural ruler of the 9th house on the ascendant, and he's got Uranus in the 9th house. So when you have a Uranus-Jupiter aspect, it gives you an eclectic approach to philosophy and religion. He grew up in a very strictly religious home, and he had tremendous difficulty with his parents. We'll talk about that in a minute, why that was. But he was a rebel. He rebelled against his parents, and he had access to large libraries, and he read all of the world literature and stuff like that, and he became very eclectic in his approach to religion, very influenced by the Indian spiritual approach, the Chinese. He wrote a book, Siddhartha. I forget I think that maybe it was about Indian philosophy or Chinese philosophy, I forget. But in any case, he was very profoundly influenced by the Oriental cultures, and he was also influenced by his own background. So he became very eclectic in his approach, and so you see that's very expressed by that Uranus Jupiter aspect. And of course, when you have Jupiter on the ascendant, it's going to give you a lot of intelligence. He also had Mercury opposite to Jupiter, Mercury in Anna, so he had an excellent mind. From an early age, he was recognized as a genius. But if you look at his chart, he has Saturn and Mars, the two malefics, in the sign of Pisces, and Saturn is exactly square to the ascendant, and that added a very, very deep, it made him very deep, and it added a tremendous amount of melancholy to the horoscope. Naturally somebody who's got Jupiter with Sagittarius on the ascendant is going to be very cheerful, very expansive type of personality, but because of the Saturn in his chart is much stronger than the Jupiter. Even though the Jupiter's ruling planet, it's 7 degrees from the ascendant. The Saturn in his chart is exactly within a second almost of his ascendant. So it added a tremendous amount of melancholy, especially in the sign of Pisces. Saturn and Mars in Pisces is also connected with melancholy, and the 12th house is the natural ruler of the 12th house of suffering And so he saw life as his philosophy was sort of difficult. He eventually, I heard he tried to kill himself, suicide when he was a young man. He had tremendous difficulty with his parents, right? Saturn and Mars are naturally in Pisces, even though they're in the third house, which indicates career of writing, they're also connected 4 signs from the ascendant. They have a connection also with the family and the father. And from another direction, even if you learn that Aries is the 4th house cusp, so Mars is the ruler of Aries, and it's in a double approaching conjunction with Saturn, which is very, very difficult. They're 2 aspects that fight each other. In his chart, Mars will be stronger. But in any case, he had a lot of trouble with the parents, right? Because the ruler Saturn and Mars signify the parents, and especially the father, and they're square, exact square to him. And so the breaking away process from the parents was extremely difficult, and it was extremely difficult and extremely hard to take place. And so those are the things that really they stick out in his chart. But eventually he became a guru in the 60s and the early 70s. And a lot of the counterculture people, they drifted towards his books, where he talked about the philosophies of India and China, and he wrote a book about the glass speed game, which was about a special group of people who got to higher knowledge, and he was mamash very important, one of the cultural influences of the 60s. And I thank everybody for listening.